Seriously, if it were anyone else, there wouldn't be any problem, but this very person who disappeared was very important. Calm down, little one. He will be here soon. Wei, seeing the new kid walking around like a rat stuck in a stick, couldn't help but laugh. He understood the kid was afraid the competition would have problems. But for this matter, there was nothing he could do except tell him to keep waiting, because, in the end, the only person who could control that bitch was himself. But there's only 3 minutes left. Oh, not yet. Oh. The young racer lightly patted the new kid on the shoulder in sympathy, before he smiled, and from the corner of his eye, he caught sight of someone coming up from under the stands, looking sullen. No need to cry. My sister survived. Huh? Non? Wei nodded with a smile on his face. The naughty bitch has arrived. The arrival of the real king made everyone excited about the match happening in the next few minutes. To see a #1 racer who, aside from his unparalleled skills, had an appearance that was striking enough to attract people who have no interest in racing cars at all to stare at him was remarkable. He was 180 centimeters tall, with honey-colored skin and a unique facial shape. His figure was so thin that people always used him as the subject of gossip. What kind of alpha was this stubborn? But the words from those crab-mouthed snails didn't bother him in the slightest. Even though he knew he was being watched, the famous racer didn't seem to care at all. That expression of annoyance confirmed that his irritability and difficult-to-please personality were more than just rumors. Some men raised their hands in irritation as Pit Babe rushed towards them after entering the field. Wei saw that and immediately walked over to his closest teammate and hugged him by the neck, leading him away from the Flies gang immediately. "What's wrong?" Wei whispered to his friend, laughing softly when he saw the other person's sullen face. "Did you like it?" That was him being curious about his friend's hookup with an alpha. "It was fine at first, but later, I felt like I was going to vomit," the top racer said, arching his neck as if he was about to throw up, causing Wei to laugh at the funny mocking gesture. "He smelled like a dog," the famous racer added. "Are you not a dog too?" "I'm a perfumed dog." The famous racer shrugged nonchalantly. At least he didn't have a strong pheromone scent like the other alphas. He had said from the beginning that if the smell wouldn't upset him, he would gladly go till the end, but the thrilling activity always ended without a climax because these dogs couldn't keep up with the agreement. "Is it fragrant? Let's try." "You can get in the car now." Wei just laughed a little annoyed at being interrupted again by the new kid before he could smell his best friend's sweet neck. Meanwhile, that sweet-smelling person turned to raise an eyebrow at him knowingly and a little with satisfaction. The famous racer took the gloves from his assistant and put them on familiarly, followed by getting his trusty helmet to hold, then walking towards the luxury racing car that was already waiting. Now our racers are all ready. All cars are in place on the track. Starting with the first car from the deadline team, Geneva! The cheering of the team's fans was loud as well as the sound of the engine revving up to win and dwarf the opponent at the same time. The bright blue Bugatti looked like it was going to be fun to watch. There was news that during the season break, the owner of the name Geneva went out and hunted quite a few small fields. Looked like today, he probably brought 100% confidence. Second one from quarterback, Red Syria. The fiery red Lamborghini showed off its hotness. Usually, in the racing industry, every racer has a stage name that they call each other in the race to make them memorable. As a result, only close people knew and called each other by their real names, like Red Syria, which was the same. That's the name people are going to remember when that racer took his car down the track. The third one from the race chaser, 01. The excitement continued to build as 3 of the 4 drivers were finalized, with the famous yellow Hennessy Venom also taking to the track for the first round, in addition to the car looking beautiful and outstanding. The handsome racer's female fan base was quite large. It was therefore not surprising that the 01 young man received cheers that sounded sweeter than the other racers. And one last shout out to King of the Hollows from ex-hunter Pit babe! The sound of the expensive luxury car revving up was as loud as the cheers of the entire stadium. Even if you're not a fan of the team, no one could resist the thrill of seeing the legendary driver of the famous track. The only shiny black SSC Tuatara in the country doesn't have to try to compete with anyone. Just by hearing the sound and seeing its beautiful appearance, one could probably guess that this beautiful rodent was not only good in price and beauty, after the team on the field checked everything for the final time. A beautiful woman in a tight dress held up a signal sign before the countdown signal began. Each car began to accelerate, ready to leave the starting point. When the countdown signal ended, the launch signal sounded and the green flag waved. The 4 luxurious cars sped off from the starting point in that second, with no one waiting for anyone. Loud cheers echoed across the field. Teammates waiting in the holding zone on the sidelines were excited as if they were competing themselves. Spectators in the stands rose from their seats in excitement, not wanting to miss a second of the action. Even someone who had been sitting with their heads down since before the game started couldn't help but raise the brim of their hat to watch the thrilling action, wanting to know how well that black rodent would perform today. The competition was as fierce as expected when there were only the crown jewels on the field that everyone was watching. Each car took turns passing without anyone giving in. The winding tracks could be quite intimidating for supporters and even beginner drivers. Every curve was a real risk. A risk of being overtaken easily by the slightest loss of control, or risking your life if an unexpected mistake occurs. Wei, who was watching the race from the pit, looked less excited than the others. It wasn't because the game was boring or anything like that, but he thought the 4 cars were evenly matched. You could tell from the loud cheering all the time. But if we were to speak honestly, it could not be denied that he knew the results from the moment the start signal sounded. Looking at the race from the beginning until now, he wanted to bet all his money that Babe would be the winner. That one would have to take the new record and go home to cuddle with him. The impressive opening match ended amid cheers from the crowd. The results of the competition did not exceed the expectations of those in the industry at all. The track king and his favorite SSC Tuatara crossed the finish line beautifully, with a new record prominently displayed on the billboard screen for the envy of the competitors. Nice race as always, Babe. Wei, who was waiting at the end of the pit lane, praised with a proud smile. Babe performed well as usual despite being upset before the game started. It's no wonder everyone calls Babe king. Thank you. Babe casually tossed a helmet to the kids on the team before walking over and hugging his tall best friend's neck and kissing him softly on the cheek as a reward for being the sweetest person and the least annoying person in his life. Did you see the final arc? I'm always watching. Why don't you see? Wei replied, bending down to smell Babe's body as soon as he had the chance. Of course, he never thought about what he would say, because he thought it was fun to see the glances of other people who were suspicious about their relationship. It was very beautiful. It didn't cost me any effort to teach you how to drift. Whoever learns to give to whoever speaks well. Babe squeezed Wei's sharp chin lightly, before shaking his hand and walking away, not wanting to pay attention to the show-off's words. He took off both of his gloves and threw them into his shoulder bag, then unzipped the front of his racing suit in discomfort. Are you leaving now? Wei asked, when he saw the other person acting as if he was going to leave as soon as he finished competing. Oh, I'm sleepy. Don't you want to stay and watch me compete? You're competing so boringly. Babe pursed his lips as he lifted the strap of his bag over his shoulder. Just step on and in the end, you'll win. Why do you need me to see that? Very spoiled. Thank you for watching my race. The famous racer bowed like a ballerina before shaking his butt off. He walked out the back door of the room without really thinking about waiting to watch him compete, as he said. This guy had almost no interest in watching anyone compete. Even the round that he had to compete in came in at the last second. He truly was someone who was born with talent. See you at the same place tonight, Wei shouted after him. Meanwhile, the bitch didn't turn around to answer. He playfully covered his ears like he didn't want to listen anymore. Wei saw this and could only laugh and shake his head lightly at Babe's lack of interest in the world, as he didn't know what other people would think.